Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
Shabbat Shalom.
There is a whole lot going on in Parashat Vaetchanan, so much so that I've got, 4 different things to say about it, but you'll have to come to all the different occasions to hear that. But for tonight, I want to focus on one of the parts of Vaetchanan that gets a lot of press among those that wish to exude their Jewish pride. And that is the passage where it says that other nations of the world will come to admire you, to respect you, because of your wisdom, O Israel. Sounds pretty nice. Not bad getting respected because of our laws, our ways. Other people will come and say, wow, these Israelites, this is really, really impressive and clever. But there's a problem in that. As much as many Jewish chauvinists would like to have you believe that that means that everyone's just going to come fawning over us because we're obviously superior and brilliant, that cannot be what the passage itself is trying to say. Because there are certain sociological, psychological, nationalistic reasons why that won't work. Let me give you an example. Imagine you are in the ancient Near East, or I don't know, maybe even in the 20th century of the United States of America, early-ish, and somebody steals a sheep. What is the penalty in many parts of the world, including the U.S. up until parts of the country in the 20th century?
Probation.
Death! Death! Right? There was, there might be some extenuating circumstances that would be thrown in, but absolutely, you get caught stealing, you are going to be on the potential hook for being executed for that. Around the world, this was a common thing. In fact, it was so common in England, and my wife will tell me if I get this wrong, but you hang for a lamb as well as a sheep is an idiom, meaning if you're going to get executed for stealing a small sheep, you might as well steal a big lamb. Right? If you're going to be, punished for this, you might as well go for the gusto and get the entire biggest thing. And of course, we have all the famous movies and stories about hanging cattle rustlers and horse thieves and all of that sort of thing. Well, if that was going on all the way up until the 20th century, and indeed in some parts of the world still continues, that must mean that that is what other countries admire and think of as being wise, correct? They're not doing it because they think it's stupid. They're doing it because they think this is what you have got to do. This is the way to keep people in order. It's important to protect private property, yada, yada, yada. What was Judaism's punishment for theft?
Double
Repayment. There's a complicated formula. It's sometimes double, sometimes more, sometimes less if you pay it back immediately. It gets a little complicated. That's why we have Mishnah and Talmud to help straighten it out for us. You can always come to the Mishnah class. Wednesday nights, got to get that commercial in. But at no point was theft ever a capital crime in the Torah. The Torah, in fact, goes out of its way to say even somebody that you catch breaking into your house under the right circumstances is not considered to be a mortal threat, and thus you are not allowed to kill them, even though they are, in the literal term, digging into your house. Plaster homes being what they were, you could burrow through the wall. Obviously, they'd never heard of the castle doctrine, where you can shoot anybody that comes onto your property. No, Torah says no. That is not right. Well, if we're going to be admired for our wisdom, then why has it taken some of the world 3,000 years to catch on to the idea that at no point is property ever worth taking someone's life as a punishment? Doesn't sound like the rest of the world has thought of that as being very wise. They seem to think quite the opposite for a very long time, which is only natural. If our laws were going to be considered so wise by everyone, they would have adopted them. Indeed, they probably would have come up with some of them on their own. But there are large portions of Torah that are not universally respected, or were not universally respected until the 20th century. So if, presumably, God understood this, that once we were plopped down in the land of Israel and Torah was up and chugging and all of our laws were being done, and people would come and visit the land of Israel and say, oh, you don't execute people for stealing sheep here? That they were not going to go home and say, you know what they did? They didn't execute people for stealing. Maybe we should, that's so what? If we knew they weren't going to do that for 3,000 years, or more importantly, God knew that, then what could God mean that they would recognize the wisdom of our people? If they're not going to actually adopt our laws for thousands of years, even after having encountered them, even in places that claimed to be using our Bible, such as Christian Europe for 2,000 years, then what were they going to admire about us that would make them eventually think there might be some wisdom in all of this? You understand the paradox that I'm working with here. Right? If we're going to be admired for our laws, then you would expect on the surface that there would be adoption of our laws by those that admired them. But since we have not seen that adoption until very, very recently, and even then usually we don't get credit, what could they have been admiring then that God would have been referring to in Vaetchanan? And I'll give you a hint, it's not the number of our Nobel Prizes, it's not the number of Jewish patent holders, it's not the percentage of Jews with PhDs. That's not the type of wisdom or success that God is talking about. He is talking about the nature of our community, of our families, of our society. That is what they're going to admire. You see, when someone comes into a community, they don't normally look up the local laws. That's not normal. My apologies to lawyers in the room who maybe that's a good hobby. When you travel to a new city or a country, you might want to check out the local legal code. But most people don't do that. Instead, most people will go to a new city and go, wow, the traffic flows so nicely here. Or, wow, the traffic is a nightmare here. Or, wow, I can leave my bag anywhere and no one's going to steal it. Or, wow, I better keep my bag like tucked under my coat because anybody will take it from my shoulder. People notice the behavior of the community around them. They notice the behavior, the patterns of life in the society or in the families that they encounter. And there are certain intangible tangibles, that is to say, things that are not screaming, there's a law about this, that nonetheless produce noticeable results in communities around the world, indeed in every human community, that lean one way or the other that we, as humans, generally have preferences for. Most of us prefer to feel safe when walking down the street. Most of us prefer when we feel we can trust other people around us. Not just that they're not going to steal our bag, but that they will honor their agreements, that the promises they make will be true, that they will be kind, respectful, courteous sorts of people. Most humans around the world respect that, at least in the aggregate. Individuals notwithstanding, some people are strange and prefer chaos over pleasantness, but by and large, humans enjoy those sorts of features in a community. And when you look at what Judaism is trying to create through the use of Torah and the creation of a community that is centered around these laws, that is the result. When you look at a community that can share an understanding of what happens when somebody is injured, what happens when somebody is in need, what happens when somebody has stolen a lamb, and we show that the value of the human life is paramount, more than the value of that lamb. When we say that yes, there are punishments and repercussions, but that they are in proper measure, that there is one law for all, that rich and noble are treated the same as the poor and the commoner, it creates a different atmosphere, a different attitude, a different feeling to that society. That was what was meant to be noticed by those who would look at our community and marvel at what they saw. Look, here are people that help each other, that help the poor in their community. Here are people that look out for each other with respect. Here are people that even treat the stranger with dignity and humanity. How strange is that? Especially in the pre-modern world. And that would make them wonder when they saw the peace in our homes, when they saw the serenity in our communities. What was behind it all? How did they get to be like this? What makes them so weird that they are able to have that contentment within their society? And that then would be a symbol of the greatness of Torah and of the greatness of God. There's just one flaw. I don't know if you've noticed. We don't always do such a good job of that. The problem is this only works if we do it. And simply having the Torah, having the scroll locked up nice and secure in the ark and having it there, doesn't actually create that wonderful society that I'm discussing. Even in a community that is entirely of Jews, even if a community that is entirely of Jews who come to services and who, at least on surface, say that they are adhering to Torah as a guide for their life, we don't always get those intangible tangibles right. Sure, it's easy to make sure that you're being careful on kashrut. It's easy to make sure you're being careful on Shabbos. It's easy to make sure you're observing the calendar with good rigor and dedication. But all of those other laws that breed a sense of humanity, of respect, of trust, those are hard. We've got them. We've got them built in to try and give us a civil and criminal perspective on life that will create that atmosphere. But if I'm honest, we often fall very short, both as individuals and as a community. And that's a shame, because when we fall short, it's not just, shucks, we missed out on having that beautiful, contented utopia that the Torah is hoping for us. It means that it also discredits the Torah, and it discredits God. If people who claim to be Jewish, or people who claim to be living by Torah, are living a life like this, and there is no benefit, there is no perk to doing so, there is no contentment, there is no peace, there is no joy, there is no harmony within and among them, then why would anyone else bother? Why would anyone else say this must be a people who have a wise system of living? We are the salespeople, not just of Torah, we are the salespeople of God. And we are the salespeople that say that there is a way to live that treats each other with that humanity and respect, that transforms society from the brutality of the ancient world into literally a utopia. But it only works when we actually do it. And when we don't, the entire enterprise is open to scorn. It's not easy, because we're human, and the laws were given because it isn't natural. You want to punch and hurt the person who stole your sheep. You want to treat the stranger differently than your dearest loved one because they're strange. But the Torah asks us to do more. And in doing more, not only to govern ourselves, not only to create a better community for ourselves, but to create an example that will show the rest of the world there is a better way. That God wants us to live that better way. But that better way only comes together. Shabbat Shalom.